The lawyer's words echoed in Phoebe Franklin's mind as she stared at the photographs spread across the mahogany desk. Your great-aunt specified in her will that the Lakehouse must remain jointly owned with Miss Clara Montgomery for a minimum of 1 year before either party can sell their share. Phoebe had never met her great-aunt Marion, had barely known the woman existed until 3 weeks ago when the estate lawyer contacted her about the inheritance. Now she owned half of a lake house in northern Michigan with a complete stranger who apparently had been her great-aunt's neighbor and closest friend for the past 40 years. The whole situation felt surreal, especially considering Phoebe had just sold her pharmaceutical company for $83 million and was trying to figure out what to do with her life now that she no longer spent 70 hours a week managing clinical trials and regulatory approvals. "Miss Montgomery is expecting you this Friday," the lawyer said, sliding a manila folder across the desk. "The property is quite beautiful. Your great-aunt was very specific about wanting you two to meet." Phoebe took the folder, her perfectly manicured nails tapping against the cardboard. At 32, she had built an empire from nothing, transforming a small research lab into one of the most promising pharmaceutical startups in the country. She was used to boardrooms and negotiations, not mysterious inheritances and forced partnerships with elderly strangers. The drive north took 6 hours, winding through increasingly rural landscapes until the highway gave way to 2-lane roads bordered by dense forests. Phoebe's Mercedes felt out of place among the pickup trucks and SUVs that passed her going the opposite direction. Her GPS led her down a private road that curved along the shoreline, and when she finally glimpsed the property, she had to pull over just to take it in. The lake house was stunning. Not the rustic cabin she had imagined, but a sprawling craftsman-style home with wide porches and floor-to-ceiling windows that reflected the late afternoon sun off the water. The lake itself stretched out like polished glass, surrounded by mountains that were just beginning to show their autumn colors. A silver sedan was already parked in the circular driveway. Phoebe grabbed her overnight bag from the trunk and made her way to the front door, her heels crunching on the gravel. Before she could knock, the door swung open. The woman standing there was not elderly. Phoebe blinked, momentarily thrown off balance. The stranger was perhaps in her late 20s, with wild auburn hair pulled into a messy bun and paint-stained overalls that somehow looked intentional rather than careless. Her green eyes were bright with curiosity and something else, maybe amusement at Phoebe's obvious confusion. "You must be Phoebe," the woman said, wiping her hands on a rag before extending one. "I'm Clara Montgomery. Well, sort of. I'm actually Clara's granddaughter, also Clara, which got confusing growing up. My grandmother passed away 2 months ago." Phoebe shook her hand, still processing. "I'm so sorry, the lawyer didn't mention anything. It happened pretty suddenly. Heart attack. She was 78 but healthier than most people half her age." The younger Clara stepped back, gesturing Phoebe inside. "Your great-aunt was devastated. They were incredibly close. She changed her will right after, actually. Added the stipulation about us both owning the property for a year. I think she wanted to honor my grandmother's memory somehow." The interior of the lake house was even more breathtaking than the exterior. Exposed wooden beams crisscrossed the vaulted ceiling, and the entire back wall was glass, offering an unobstructed view of the lake. The furniture was an eclectic mix of vintage and modern pieces that somehow worked together perfectly. "This is incredible," Phoebe said, setting her bag down. "Your great-aunt had amazing taste. She and my grandmother built this place together about 30 years ago. They were both artists, actually. Marion was a sculptor and my grandmother was a painter." Clara walked toward the kitchen, which was open to the main living space. I was just making tea. Want some? Sure, thanks. Phoebe followed, her mind racing with questions. So you inherited your grandmother's half? Yeah. I've been staying here on and off for the past few years, using the studio out back. I'm a painter too, trying to make a living at it, which is about as stable as it sounds. Clara pulled 2 mugs from a cabinet. Your great-aunt let me stay rent-free in exchange for maintaining the property and keeping her company. She was really wonderful. There was genuine affection in Clara's voice, and Phoebe felt a twinge of regret that she had never known Marion. I wish I had met her. She talked about you sometimes. She followed your career, was really proud of what you accomplished. Said you reminded her of herself when she was younger, before she gave up the corporate world for art. Clara poured steaming water over tea bags in both mugs. She tried to reach out a few times, but I got the impression your family wasn't very close. That's putting it mildly. Phoebe accepted the mug, wrapping her hands around its warmth. My parents were more interested in status and appearances than actual relationships. I haven't spoken to them in 3 years. Clara's expression softened with understanding. Well, Marion definitely understood complicated families. She said that's why she and my grandmother became so close. They were each other's chosen family. They sat on the couch facing the windows, watching the sun begin its descent toward the mountains. The silence between them was surprisingly comfortable, lacking the awkwardness Phoebe had anticipated. So what happens now? Clara asked after a while. The lawyer explained the 1-year requirement, but I have no idea what that actually looks like in practice. I guess we figure it out together. Phoebe sipped her tea, her business mind already working through the logistics. I don't have any immediate plans. I just sold my company, so I'm technically unemployed for the first time since college. You sold a pharmaceutical company and you're in your early 30s. Clara's eyebrows shot up. That's impressive. I got lucky with timing and had a good team. Phoebe deflected, uncomfortable with the praise. She had worked herself nearly to exhaustion building the company, but talking about her success always felt like bragging. What about you? Are you planning to stay here? I'd like to, at least part-time. My lease in Chicago is up next month, and honestly, I've been doing my best work here. There's something about this place that's really inspiring. Clara gestured toward the windows. But I don't want to monopolize the space if you were planning to use it too. I hadn't really thought that far ahead, Phoebe admitted. But now that I'm here, I can see the appeal. Maybe we could both stay. The place is certainly big enough. Clara's face lit up. Really? You'd be okay with that? Why not? We're going to co-own it for a year anyway. Might as well get to know each other. The words were practical, but Phoebe surprised herself with how much she actually meant them. There was something about Clara's easy warmth that made her want to stay, to see what this unexpected inheritance might bring. They spent the evening exploring the property together. Clara showed her the studio behind the main house, a converted boathouse filled with canvases in various stages of completion. Her work was incredible, bold abstract pieces that somehow captured the feeling of the landscape without literally depicting it. These are really good, Phoebe said, studying a large canvas dominated by blues and silvers that evoked the lake at twilight. Thanks. I've got a show in Detroit next month, actually. First solo exhibition. Clara's voice was equal parts excited and nervous. It's a big opportunity, but also terrifying. You'll be great. Your work deserves to be seen. They made dinner together, falling into an easy rhythm in the kitchen despite having just met. Clara made a pasta sauce from scratch while Phoebe handled the salad and garlic bread, and they ate on the porch as stars began appearing overhead. The conversation flowed naturally, ranging from art to science to their shared love of terrible reality television. Phoebe couldn't remember the last time she had felt this relaxed. In her previous life, every meal had been a working lunch or a networking dinner. Every conversation had been strategic, transactional. But here, with this stranger who was somehow not a stranger at all, she could just be herself. Later, as she settled into one of the upstairs bedrooms with its view of the moonlit lake, Phoebe found herself looking forward to tomorrow in a way she had not anticipated. Maybe this forced inheritance was not such a bad thing after all. She woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of footsteps on the porch below her window. Pulling on jeans and a sweater, she made her way downstairs to find Clara already dressed and heading out the door. "Morning," Clara called over her shoulder. "I'm going for a run. Coffee is fresh. Help yourself to anything in the kitchen." Before Phoebe could respond, Clara was gone, jogging down the path that circled the lake. Phoebe poured herself coffee and stood at the window, watching Clara's figure grow smaller in the distance. She had not gone for a run in years, had barely exercised beyond occasional yoga classes that she usually canceled because of work. But something about the crisp morning air and the beautiful scenery made her want to try. 20 minutes later, she was huffing and puffing her way around the lake path, seriously regretting her impulsive decision. Her lungs burned and her legs felt like lead, but she refused to quit. When she finally made it back to the house, Clara was stretching on the porch, barely winded. "Nice job," Clara said, grinning. "First time running in a while, is it that obvious?" Phoebe gasped, bracing her hands on her knees. "Only a little. You've got good determination, though. Most people would have turned back." They fell into a routine over the next few days. Mornings were for running, though Phoebe's stamina improved only marginally. Clara would spend her afternoons in the studio while Phoebe set up a workspace in the den, finally tackling the mountain of emails and calls from investors and headhunters that she had been avoiding since the sale. But evenings were for each other, cooking dinner and talking until late into the night. On her fourth day at the Lakehouse, Phoebe was startled by a knock on the front door just after breakfast. Clara was already in her studio, so Phoebe answered it herself. The man standing on the porch was tall and broad-shouldered, with dark hair that was slightly too long and eyes that were an unusual shade of gray-blue. He wore faded jeans and a flannel shirt with the sleeves rolled up, revealing forearms that suggested he worked with his hands. A toolbox sat at his feet. "Hi," he said, his voice deep and slightly rough. "I'm looking for Clara Montgomery. She's in the studio. Can I help you with something?" He studied her for a moment, his gaze direct but not invasive. "You must be Phoebe Franklin. I'm Nathan Sullivan. I do maintenance and repairs around the property. Your great-aunt hired me about 5 years ago." "Oh, right. Clara mentioned something about that." Phoebe stepped back, gesturing him inside. "She's out in the boathouse studio. I can show you, or you can just head back there if you know the way." "I know it, but thanks." Nathan picked up his toolbox, then hesitated. "Actually, I should probably talk to you too, since you're co-owner now. There are some repairs that need doing before winter. Roof needs patching, dock needs reinforcement, furnace should be serviced. I can put together an estimate if you want." "That would be great, thank you." Phoebe found herself intrigued by this man who had materialized out of nowhere. "How did you start working for my great-aunt?" "I grew up around here, do contracting and carpentry work for most of the properties on this side of the lake. Marion hired me to build some custom shelving for her sculptures and we got along well. She was a character." His expression softened with obvious fondness. "She'll be missed around here." "I wish I had known her." "She would have liked getting to know you too. She talked about you sometimes, wondered if you'd ever slow down long enough to visit." Nathan's tone was matter-of-fact, not judgmental, but Phoebe still felt the sting of guilt. Anyway, I'll go find Clara and get started on that estimate. He headed toward the studio, leaving Phoebe standing in the doorway, wondering why her heart was beating slightly faster than normal. She told herself it was just the morning run catching up with her. Over the next week, Nathan became a regular presence around the property. He was there most mornings, working on various projects with quiet efficiency. Phoebe found herself hyper-aware of him, noticing the way his shoulders moved when he hammered, the concentration on his face when he measured boards, the easy laugh he shared with Clara when they talked about local gossip. She told herself she was being ridiculous. She had just gotten out of a decade of non-stop work, had finally achieved the financial freedom most people only dreamed about. The last thing she needed was to develop a crush on some handyman, no matter how attractive he was or how much his presence seemed to make the Lakehouse feel more complete. But her treacherous heart did not seem to care about logic. "You should talk to him," Clara said one afternoon, catching Phoebe watching Nathan repair the dock from the safety of the living room window. "I have talked to him. We discussed the furnace yesterday. I mean really talked to him. He's single, by the way, and a genuinely good guy. He runs a pretty successful contracting business, does custom furniture building on the side. He's also been staring at you when you're not looking." Phoebe's pulse jumped. "He has not." "He absolutely has. Trust me, I've been watching you two dance around each other all week. It's adorable and painful at the same time." Clara came to stand beside her at the window. "Your great-aunt would have loved this, by the way. She was always trying to set people up." "Well, I'm not looking for a relationship right now. I just got my life back." "Who said anything about a relationship? I'm just saying you should have a conversation with the attractive man who's been fixing your house. See where it goes." Clara bumped her shoulder against Phoebe's. "You're allowed to have fun, you know. You're allowed to just enjoy things without turning them into a business plan." The words hit harder than Clara probably intended. Phoebe had spent so many years optimizing every aspect of her life, treating her own happiness like another metric to be maximized through strategic planning. When was the last time she had done something just because it felt good, without calculating the potential return on investment? That evening, when Nathan was packing up his tools, Phoebe found herself walking outside before she could overthink it. "Hey," she called out. "Are you hungry? Clara and I are making burgers." Nathan looked up, surprise flickering across his face before settling into something warmer. "Yeah, actually. That sounds great." Dinner was easier than Phoebe expected. Nathan fit naturally into their dynamic, trading stories with Clara about growing up in the area while asking Phoebe thoughtful questions about her work that went beyond the usual superficial interest. He listened when she talked about the challenges of drug development and regulatory approval processes, asking follow-up questions that showed he was actually paying attention. "So what made you decide to sell?" he asked as they sat on the porch afterward, watching the sun set over the mountains. "Honestly, I was burning out. I loved the science, loved the idea of developing treatments that could help people. But running a company is different from doing the research. It became all about investors and quarterly projections and scaling up production. I felt like I was spending all my time in meetings instead of actually making a difference." Phoebe paused, surprised by her own honesty. "I thought selling would give me freedom, but instead, I just feel kind of lost." "That's understandable. You spent a decade building something and then let it go. Of course you're going to need time to figure out what comes next." Nathan's voice was steady, reassuring without being patronizing. "This seems like a good place to do that figuring, though. It really is. I've only been here a week and I already feel different, calmer maybe, more present." She looked at him, finding those unusual eyes already on her. "Do you ever think about leaving? Doing something bigger?" "I used to. When I was younger, I thought success meant getting out of small-town life, moving to a city, making a name for myself." He leaned back in his chair, his gaze moving to the darkening sky. "But then I realized I already had everything I wanted. I get to work with my hands, build things that last. I know my neighbors, I know the land. I've got a good life here." "That sounds nice," Phoebe said softly, and she meant it. There was something deeply appealing about Nathan's contentment, his lack of restless ambition. She had spent so long chasing the next goal, the next milestone, that she had forgotten what it felt like to simply be satisfied. Clara excused herself around 9, claiming she wanted to finish a painting, but Phoebe suspected she was deliberately leaving them alone. Nathan did not seem to be in a hurry to leave, though, and Phoebe was glad. They talked for hours, the conversation ranging from serious to silly, touching on family and dreams and regrets. He told her about his parents, who had retired to Arizona but visited every summer. She told him about the loneliness of success, how she had sacrificed relationships and experiences for her career without realizing what she was giving up. "It's not too late," Nathan said when she expressed regret about all the time she had wasted. "You're what, 32? You've got decades ahead of you to do all the things you missed." "I suppose so. It just feels overwhelming sometimes, trying to figure out where to start." "Start here. Start now." He gestured at the space around them. "You're already doing it, whether you realize it or not." When Nathan finally left around midnight, Phoebe felt something shift inside her. This was not the calculated beginning of a strategic relationship. This was just a connection, simple and genuine, and it terrified and exhilarated her in equal measure. The next morning, she woke to find a note from Clara saying she had driven into town for art supplies and would be back by lunch. Phoebe made coffee and was debating whether to attempt another run when she heard hammering from the roof. Nathan was already working, apparently having let himself onto the property. Phoebe walked outside and shaded her eyes against the morning sun, watching him move across the slope of the roof with easy confidence. "You're up early," she called up. He looked down, a smile breaking across his face. "Could say the same about you. Thought you might sleep in after staying up so late. Coffee called to me. Do you want some? You shouldn't have to work on an empty stomach. I had breakfast, but I'd never say no to coffee." He climbed down the ladder with the same easy grace he did everything, and Phoebe tried not to stare at the way his shirt pulled across his shoulders. They sat on the porch steps together, mugs warming their hands against the cool morning air. "So what's the damage on the roof?" Phoebe asked. "Not too bad, actually. Your great-aunt kept the place in good shape. Just needs some shingles replaced and flashing repaired. Should be done by this afternoon." He took a sip of coffee, then glanced at her sideways. "I was thinking, if you're still trying to figure out what to do with all your newfound free time, you might want to check out the fall festival in town this weekend. It's pretty low-key but fun. Local vendors, live music, that sort of thing." "Are you asking me out, Nathan Sullivan?" Phoebe was surprised by her own directness. "I guess I am, Phoebe Franklin." He met her eyes, his expression open and hopeful. "Unless you're not interested, which would be disappointing but understandable." "I'm interested," she heard herself say. "Very interested, actually." His smile was worth every ounce of risk. "Good, I'll pick you up Saturday at noon. It's a date." The rest of the week passed in a pleasant blur. Clara was thrilled about the upcoming date, and insisted on taking Phoebe shopping in town for something to wear that was not business casual or athletic wear. They found a small boutique that carried locally made clothing, and Phoebe ended up with a soft green sweater that Clara insisted brought out her eyes and jeans that actually fit properly. You look like a real person now, Clara teased as they loaded their purchases into the car. No offense, but your wardrobe was very CEO going to a casual Friday. None taken. I've been wearing the same 5 outfits on rotation for years. It was efficient. Phoebe laughed at herself, realizing how ridiculous that sounded now. Saturday morning arrived with perfect autumn weather, cool and crisp with brilliant blue skies. Phoebe changed outfits 3 times before finally settling on the green sweater and jeans, adding boots and a scarf that Clara loaned her. When Nathan's truck pulled up at exactly noon, her heart was pounding with a nervousness she had not felt in years. "You look beautiful," he said when she opened the door, and the sincerity in his voice made her blush. "Thanks. You clean up pretty nice yourself." He was wearing dark jeans and a button-down shirt under a leather jacket, his hair slightly tamed, but still maintaining that slightly too long, rebellious quality. He opened the truck door for her, a gesture that felt genuine rather than performative. The drive into town took 20 minutes, winding through forests that were ablaze with fall colors. Nathan pointed out landmarks along the way, telling her stories about growing up in the area. The town itself was charming, with a main street lined with brick buildings and trees whose leaves created a canopy of gold and red overhead. The festival was set up in the Central Park, with white tents housing various vendors and a stage at one end where a folk band was playing. The crowd was a mix of locals and tourists, everyone bundled in sweaters and sipping apple cider or coffee. Nathan seemed to know everyone they passed, stopping frequently to make introductions. Phoebe met shop owners and teachers, artists and farmers, all of whom welcomed her warmly when Nathan explained she was co-owner of the Lakehouse. Several people mentioned how much they had loved Marion, sharing fond memories that made Phoebe wish even more that she had known her great-aunt. They wandered through the vendor tents, sampling local honey and admiring handmade pottery. Nathan bought her a cider donut that was still warm, and she declared it the best thing she had ever eaten, which made him laugh. "City living has deprived you of the simple pleasures," he said, buying 6 more for them to take home. "Apparently so. I've been missing out." They found a spot on the grass near the stage and sat listening to the music, close enough that their shoulders touched. The afternoon sun was warm despite the cool air, and Phoebe felt a contentment she could not remember ever experiencing before. No part of her was thinking about work or strategy or the future. She was just here in this moment, with this man who made her feel seen in a way that had nothing to do with her accomplishments. "Can I ask you something?" Nathan said during a break between songs. "Of course. What scared you most about selling your company?" The question caught her off guard, but in a good way. That I had tied my entire identity to it, that without the company, without the title and the work, I wouldn't know who I was anymore. She pulled up a blade of grass, rolling it between her fingers. "I'm still figuring out if that fear was justified. And what have you learned so far? That maybe I'm more than what I do for a living. That maybe there's a version of me that exists just for herself, not for productivity or achievement." She looked at him, finding understanding in his expression. "It's harder than it sounds, letting go of that need to constantly prove yourself." "I think you're doing pretty well," Nathan said softly. "From where I'm sitting, you're figuring it out just fine." The band started playing again, a slower song that had couples around them standing to dance. Nathan got to his feet and offered her his hand. "I should warn you, I'm not much of a dancer," Phoebe said, even as she let him pull her up. "Good thing this isn't much of a dance floor. We can just sway and call it even." He was right. It was not formal dancing, just moving together to the music with his arms around her waist and her hands on his shoulders. They were close enough that she could smell his cologne, something woodsy and clean that suited him perfectly. When she let herself relax into his embrace, it felt like the most natural thing in the world. "I'm really glad you came to the Lakehouse," Nathan murmured near her ear. "Me too," she whispered back, and she meant it with every fiber of her being. The song ended, but they stayed in their embrace for a moment longer before reluctantly separating. They spent the rest of the afternoon at the festival, and by the time Nathan drove her home, Phoebe's cheeks hurt from smiling so much. He walked her to the door as the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange. "I had a really good time today," Phoebe said, not wanting the day to end. "Me too. We should do it again soon." Nathan reached up, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear in a gesture that was both tender and confident. "Can I kiss you?" Instead of answering, Phoebe closed the distance between them, rising on her toes to press her lips to his. The kiss started gentle, exploratory, but deepened when Nathan's hand came up to cup her cheek. It had been so long since Phoebe had been kissed, and never like this, never with this combination of heat and tenderness that made her knees weak. When they finally pulled apart, both slightly breathless, Nathan rested his forehead against hers. "I've been wanting to do that all week," he admitted. "Only a week. I've been thinking about it since the day we met." He laughed, kissing her once more, quick and sweet. "I should go before I forget all my good intentions about taking this slow." "What if I don't want to take it slow?" The words surprised Phoebe even as she said them, but they felt true. "Then we'll figure out a pace that works for both of us," Nathan said, stroking his thumb across her cheekbone. "But right now, I'm going to be a gentleman and say good night before I'm too tempted to stay." He kissed her one more time, lingering and full of promise, before heading to his truck. Phoebe watched him drive away, touching her fingers to her lips, feeling like a teenager with her first crush. Clara was waiting inside with a knowing grin. "So I take it the date went well." "It was perfect," Phoebe said, unable to stop smiling. "He's perfect. This whole thing is perfect and terrifying. Welcome to falling in love. It's supposed to feel like that." The words should have scared her, but instead they felt right. She was falling in love, had probably started falling the moment Nathan showed up on the porch with his toolbox and his honest eyes. And for once in her life, Phoebe was not going to overanalyze it or create a strategic plan. She was just going to let it happen. Over the next few weeks, Phoebe and Nathan fell into a pattern of spending nearly every day together. He would come by to work on various projects around the property, and she would bring him lunch or help with tasks that needed an extra set of hands. In the evenings, he would often stay for dinner, the three of them establishing a comfortable dynamic that felt like family. But there were also times when it was just the two of them. Long walks around the lake where they talked about everything and nothing. Drives to neighboring towns to explore antique shops and local restaurants. Quiet evenings on the porch where they would sit together, her reading while he sketched designs for furniture pieces, their feet tangled together on the ottoman. "I need to tell you something," Phoebe said one evening about a month after their first date. They were alone at the Lakehouse, Clara having gone to Detroit for her exhibition opening. Nathan looked up from the sketch he was working on, his expression attentive. "What's on your mind?" "I've never felt like this before. In my previous relationships, I was always holding something back, keeping part of myself separate. But with you, I want to be completely open. I want to let you in." She took a breath, steadying herself. "It scares me how much I care about you already." He set his sketchbook aside and pulled her closer, tucking her against his side. "I care about you too. A lot. Probably more than is reasonable for a few weeks of knowing someone. Is it crazy that I could see a future with you? That when I think about what I want my life to look like, you're in it. If it's crazy, then we're both crazy." Nathan tilted her chin up so he could look into her eyes. I'm falling in love with you, Phoebe. Maybe I've already fallen. I just didn't want to scare you off by saying it too soon. You're not scaring me off. I'm falling in love with you too. The words felt powerful and vulnerable all at once. I think part of why I came here, why I agreed to stay, was because some part of me knew I needed this. Needed you. Your great aunt would be pleased, Nathan said with a soft smile. She told me once that the Lakehouse had a way of bringing people what they needed, even if they didn't know they needed it. She sounds like she was very wise. She was, and she would have loved seeing you happy. Nathan kissed her then, deep and thorough, and Phoebe let herself get lost in it. When he pulled back, his eyes were dark with desire but also a question. Stay with me tonight, Phoebe whispered. Not in the guest room with me. Are you sure? I've never been more sure of anything. He stood, offering his hand, and she took it, letting him lead her upstairs to the master bedroom with its view of the moonlit lake. They undressed each other slowly, taking time to explore and appreciate, and when they finally came together, it was both passionate and tender, a physical expression of everything they had been building between them. Afterward, wrapped in Nathan's arms with her head on his chest, Phoebe felt a peace she had never known before. This was what she had been missing all those years of chasing success. This connection, this intimacy, this feeling of being completely known and accepted. I love you, she said into the darkness. I love you too, Nathan replied, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. They fell asleep tangled together, and Phoebe dreamed of a future filled with mornings like this, waking up beside the man she loved in a house that had somehow become home. Clara returned from Detroit 3 days later, buzzing with excitement about her successful show. She had sold 6 pieces and gotten interest from a gallery owner about a potential representation deal. This calls for celebration, Phoebe declared, already planning a special dinner. Agreed. And you can tell me all about how you and Nathan officially became a couple while I was gone, because the energy in this house is completely different. Clara grinned at Phoebe's blush. I'm happy for you, truly. You both deserve this. They invited Nathan over for the celebration dinner, along with a few of Clara's friends from town who had helped support her art over the years. The Lakehouse filled with laughter and conversation, and Phoebe found herself thinking how different her life was now compared to just 2 months ago. Then, she had been lost and lonely, unsure of her purpose. Now she was surrounded by people who cared about her for who she was, not what she had accomplished. And she had Nathan, who looked at her like she was precious, who made her feel cherished and desired and understood. As autumn deepened into winter, Phoebe and Nathan's relationship continued to grow stronger. He taught her how to build a fire in the massive stone fireplace, how to identify different types of trees by their bark, how to find joy in simple manual labor. She introduced him to classical music and documentaries about scientific breakthroughs, and they stayed up late discussing everything from philosophy to their favorite childhood memories. On Thanksgiving, they hosted dinner at the Lakehouse, inviting Clara and Nathan's parents who were visiting from Arizona. Phoebe was nervous about meeting them, but they were warm and welcoming, treating her like she already belonged in their family. Our son is happier than we've seen him in years, Nathan's mother said as they worked together in the kitchen, preparing dishes for the feast. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it. He makes me happy too, Phoebe said, glancing through the doorway to where Nathan was showing his father some of his recent furniture designs. I never thought I could have this, this kind of simple, honest happiness. There's nothing simple about love, dear. It's the most complicated, wonderful thing in the world. But when it's right, it feels easy, doesn't it? It really does. After dinner, As they sat around the fire sharing stories and drinking wine, Nathan's father asked Phoebe about her plans for the future. "I've actually been thinking about starting a foundation," she said, the idea having crystallized over the past few weeks. "Using the money from selling my company to fund research for rare diseases that pharmaceutical companies usually ignore because they're not profitable enough. I could provide grants to scientists and labs, help move promising treatments through the early stages of development." "That sounds amazing," Clara said enthusiastically. "Very on brand for you, using your business skills for good. I think it could make a real difference. And the best part is, I could run it from here, remotely. No need to move back to the city or give up this life I've built." She looked at Nathan as she said this, and the warmth in his eyes told her he understood what she was really saying. That night, after everyone had left and they were cleaning up the kitchen together, Nathan pulled her into his arms. "I meant to do this properly, but I can't hold it in anymore." He took a breath, his expression serious but hopeful. "Move in with me, or let me move in here. I don't care where we live, I just want to wake up next to you every morning and come home to you every night." "You basically already live here," Phoebe teased, but her heart was racing with joy. "But yes, officially, absolutely yes. I want that too. There's more." Nathan reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. "I know it's fast. I know we've only been together a few months, but I've never been more certain of anything. Phoebe Franklin, will you marry me?" He opened the box to reveal a simple but beautiful ring, a square-cut diamond set in platinum. It was elegant and timeless, exactly what she would have chosen for herself if she had ever let herself dream about such things. "Yes," she breathed, tears streaming down her face. "Yes, absolutely yes." Nathan slipped the ring onto her finger and it fit perfectly, like it had been made for her. They kissed, long and deep, sealing the promise they were making to each other. "I love you so much," Phoebe said when they finally broke apart. "I can't believe this is my life now. 6 months ago I was so lost, and now I have everything I never knew I wanted." "We have everything," Nathan corrected gently. "This is our life, our future. We build it together." They told Clara the next morning, and she screamed so loud she probably scared every bird in a 5-mile radius. She insisted on throwing them an engagement party, which turned into a massive celebration that seemed to involve half the town. Phoebe met countless people who had known Marion and shared stories about her great-aunt's matchmaking tendencies. "She tried to set me up with Nathan about 2 years ago," one woman told Phoebe with a laugh. "Said we'd be perfect together. I told her he wasn't my type, but she just smiled and said the right person would come along eventually. Guess she was right, just not about it being me." "She talked about you a lot in those last few months," another person shared. "Kept saying she had a good feeling about getting you to the Lakehouse, that it would change your life. I think she knew what she was doing with that inheritance." The more Phoebe learned about Marion, the more she believed her great-aunt had orchestrated this whole situation. The timing of changing the will, the requirement that she and Clara co-own the property for a year, even hiring Nathan to work on the house. It all felt intentional, like Marion had known exactly what Phoebe needed and had created the circumstances to give it to her. "Thank you," Phoebe whispered one evening, standing in front of the portrait of Marion that hung in the hallway. "Thank you for seeing what I couldn't see, for giving me the push I needed." "Talking to the painting?" Nathan asked, coming up behind her and wrapping his arms around her waist, thanking her. "I think she planned all of this, you know. I think she brought us together on purpose." "I think you're right. She told me once that I worked too hard and needed to find someone who understood what it meant to be dedicated to something, who wouldn't resent the time I spent on my craft. I think she knew you were that person before either of us did." They decided to get married in the spring at the Lakehouse where their story had begun. It would be small and intimate, just close friends and family, exactly what they both wanted. Clara volunteered to paint something special as a wedding gift, and Nathan's parents offered to help with whatever they needed. Winter settled in fully, blanketing the property in snow and transforming the landscape into something magical. Phoebe had never experienced a real winter before, having grown up in Southern California, and spent her adult life in cities where snow was more inconvenience than wonder. But here, with Nathan teaching her how to ice skate on the frozen lake and Clara building snowmen that were more art than decoration, winter became her favorite season. She officially launched her foundation in January, working with lawyers and advisors to set up the legal structure and begin identifying potential grant recipients. The work was fulfilling in a way her company had never been, knowing that every dollar would go toward helping people rather than generating profit. She held video conferences with researchers and read scientific papers, feeling that familiar thrill of intellectual engagement without the crushing pressure of running a business. "You're glowing," Nathan observed one evening after she had spent the day interviewing candidates for the foundation's board of directors. "I feel good. Like I'm finally using my knowledge and experience for something that matters, something bigger than myself." She closed her laptop and moved to sit beside him on the couch. "I couldn't have done this without you, without this place, this new life. You gave me the space to figure out who I want to be. You gave that to yourself. I just happened to be here when you were ready." Nathan pulled her close, kissing her temple. "But I'm glad I get to witness it, get to be part of your journey." "Forever," Phoebe said, playing with the engagement ring that she still sometimes forgot she was wearing. "You get to be part of it forever." The wedding planning was surprisingly fun, mostly because both Phoebe and Nathan cared more about the marriage than the wedding itself. They kept things simple: a ceremony on the Lakehouse lawn overlooking the water, a reception in a rented tent with local catering and a playlist instead of a live band. Clara designed the invitations and helped Phoebe find a dress, a flowing white gown that was elegant but not overly formal. "You look like a fairy tale," Clara said when Phoebe tried it on for the final fitting. "I feel like I'm living in one," Phoebe admitted. "Sometimes I worry I'm going to wake up and discover this was all a dream. It's real, and you deserve every bit of this happiness." The wedding day arrived with perfect weather, warm and sunny with just enough breeze to keep things comfortable. Phoebe got ready in the master bedroom with Clara's help, her stomach fluttering with nervous excitement. When it was time, Clara walked her down the makeshift aisle to where Nathan waited, looking devastatingly handsome in a charcoal gray suit. The ceremony was officiated by a local judge who had known Marion, and she incorporated stories about Phoebe's great-aunt into the service, honoring the woman who had made this all possible. When it came time for vows, both Phoebe and Nathan had written their own. "Phoebe, 6 months ago I met a stranger who was inheriting half of a lake house," Nathan began, his voice steady but emotional. "I had no idea that stranger would become my best friend, my partner, the love of my life. You challenged everything I thought I knew about ambition and success, showed me that drive and dedication could coexist with kindness and vulnerability. You make me want to be better, do more, reach higher, and you make me feel like I'm enough exactly as I am. I promise to love you fiercely and gently, to support your dreams and build new ones with you, to be your partner in every sense of the word for the rest of our lives." Phoebe was crying before she even started her own vows, but she pushed through. "Nathan, I came to this lake house lost and empty, trying to figure out what to do with a life that felt purposeless despite all my achievements. And then you showed up with your quiet confidence and your genuine heart, and suddenly everything made sense. You taught me that success isn't measured in dollars or milestones, but in moments of connection and joy. You showed me what it means to build a life instead of just a career. I promise to love you with everything I am, to be your safe harbor and your adventure, to choose you every single day for the rest of my life. When the judge pronounced them married and Nathan kissed her, the small gathered crowd erupted in applause. Phoebe felt like her heart might burst from happiness. The reception was perfect, full of laughter and dancing and toasts that made her cry happy tears. Nathan's father gave a speech about how proud they were of their son for finding someone who matched him so completely. Clara shared stories about watching Phoebe transform from a workaholic CEO into someone who knew how to relax and enjoy life. And Phoebe surprised Nathan by announcing she had purchased the property from Clara, who had decided to use her portion of the inheritance money to open her own gallery in Detroit. "This way the Lakehouse stays in our family," Phoebe explained. "And Clara gets to chase her dreams without being tied to a property she can't fully use. Plus, it means we never have to leave our home." "Our home," Nathan repeated, pulling her into his arms. "I like the sound of that." They spent their wedding night at the Lakehouse, in the same bedroom where they had first made love, and fell asleep as husband and wife with the sound of the lake lapping at the shore outside their window. Life settled into a beautiful rhythm after the wedding. Nathan continued his contracting work while also building custom furniture pieces that were starting to gain recognition beyond their local area. Phoebe ran her foundation, traveling occasionally to meet with researchers, but mostly working from the home office Nathan had built for her. They hosted dinners and game nights, became fixtures in the local community, volunteered for various causes. A year after their wedding, Phoebe discovered she was pregnant. The news was unexpected but joyful, and Nathan cried when she told him, holding her close and whispering about all the adventures they would have as a family. "I never thought I wanted kids," Phoebe admitted as they sat on the porch that evening, her hand on her still flat stomach. "I was too focused on work to even consider it, but now I can't imagine not doing this with you." "We're going to be amazing parents," Nathan said confidently. "And our kid is going to grow up in the best place in the world, surrounded by nature and love." Their daughter was born in early spring, just as the trees were beginning to bud and the lake was thawing from winter. They named her Marian Clara, honoring both the women who had made their family possible. She had Nathan's dark hair and Phoebe's blue eyes, and from the moment Phoebe held her, she knew she had never loved anything more. Watching Nathan with their daughter made Phoebe fall in love with him all over again. He was patient and tender, singing lullabies in his deep voice and spending hours just staring at Marian like she was the most fascinating thing in the world. He built her a beautiful crib from reclaimed wood and painted delicate flowers on the walls of her nursery. He took night feedings without complaint and changed diapers like he had been doing it his whole life. "You're a natural," Phoebe said one evening, watching him rock Marian to sleep. "I had a good example," Nathan replied, nodding toward the portrait of Phoebe's great-aunt that they had moved to the nursery. "Plus, I've got the best partner. We're a team." Clara visited frequently, her gallery thriving in Detroit but her heart still connected to the Lakehouse and the family there. She painted a portrait of baby Marian that captured her sweet innocence perfectly, and it hung in the living room where everyone could admire it. As Marian grew from infant to toddler, the Lakehouse filled with the sounds of laughter and play. She learned to walk on the porch, took her first swim in the lake with Nathan holding her securely, helped Phoebe plant a garden that became her favorite place to explore. The foundation continued to grow, funding breakthrough research and making real differences in people's lives. Nathan's furniture business expanded, with pieces being commissioned by clients across the country. But through all the success and growth, what mattered most was the life they had built together. The quiet mornings drinking coffee while Marion played at their feet, the family dinners that often extended late into the evening. The tradition of walking around the lake every Sunday, pointing out changes in the seasons and telling stories. The deep, abiding love that grew stronger with every passing year. On their 5th wedding anniversary, Phoebe and Nathan stood on the dock at sunset, watching Marion chase fireflies in the yard behind them. "Do you ever think about how different your life would be if you had never come here?" Nathan asked. "All the time. I'd probably be miserable in some city, working myself to death on my next venture, never knowing what I was missing." Phoebe leaned against him, his arm automatically coming around her shoulders. "That inheritance was the best thing that ever happened to me. Not because of the property, but because it brought me to you." "I think Marion knew exactly what she was doing," Nathan said. "She told me once that the Lakehouse had magic in it, that it brought people together who needed each other. I didn't believe her then, thought she was just being romantic, but she was right. She was right about a lot of things." Phoebe turned to face him, standing on her toes to kiss him softly. "I'm so grateful for this life, for you, for everything we've built together." "Me too," Nathan murmured against her lips. "Every single day, me too." They stood there as the sun disappeared below the mountains and the stars began to emerge, holding each other close while their daughter's laughter rang out across the water. This was happiness, Phoebe thought. Not the achievements or accolades she had once chased, but this simple, profound contentment. A home filled with love, a partner who knew her completely, a child who was the best of both of them. She had been a millionaire who inherited a lake house with a stranger, not knowing the property would bring love. But it had brought so much more than that. It had brought her home to herself, to the life she was meant to live, to the family she was meant to have. And as she stood there in Nathan's arms, watching their daughter play in the twilight, Phoebe knew she would not change a single thing about the journey that had led her here. The lake house had indeed worked its magic, just as Marion had promised it would. And the love that had bloomed within its walls would continue to grow for generations to come. A testament to the power of taking chances, opening your heart, and trusting that sometimes the best things in life are the ones you never planned for. Years later, when Marion was old enough to understand, they would tell her the story of how her parents met, how an inheritance and a stranger had changed everything. They would walk her through the house that her great-great-aunt had built, showing her the studio where Clara had painted and the workshop where her father created his furniture. They would teach her about love and legacy, about the importance of following your heart even when it leads you somewhere unexpected. But that was still to come. For now, there was just this perfect moment, this perfect life, this perfect love that had grown from the most unlikely of beginnings. Phoebe pulled Nathan closer, breathing in the scent of him that had become as familiar as home, and smiled up at the emerging stars. "I love you," she whispered. "I love you too," he whispered back. "Forever and always." And in the gathering darkness, with the lake stretching out before them and their daughter's laughter floating on the breeze, they held each other close and knew that they had found everything they had ever needed, right here where their story began. The lake house stood as it always had, solid and welcoming, its windows glowing with warm light. Inside, memories layered upon memories, love building upon love. Marion Franklin's final gift to her great-niece had been more than property or wealth. It had been the gift of possibility, of second chances, of a future Phoebe had never dared to imagine. and it had been, without question, the most precious inheritance of all.